Please welcome from Google, Jessie Frazelle.
Thanks. Got really bright all of a sudden. So I'm going to be talking about container Linux on the desktop, or also like how I over-engineered my laptop. If you don't know, I run Linux on the desktop. This is actually running CoreOS Linux on the desktop, so if anything happens, it was not me, it was the computer. But yeah, it should be interesting. I'm Jess, if you don't know me. I've contributed to a bunch of open source projects, like maybe you know me from Docker or Kubernetes. And just like a little bit of content warning for the rest of this talk, like really don't try this at home unless like you actually like are going to figure out the shit yourself, because at the end of the day, like I am not going to support this. I mean, with regard to anything other than my own personal computer, if you have my exact same setup and your name is Jessie when you log in, totally fine. Anything else, it's all up to you. So I've like done some things with containers, and I like genuinely love containers, and like a lot of the things that I do are centered around like desktop applications in containers, which is like pretty weird, to be honest. I've also like containerized my entire closet. This was my closet when I lived in San Francisco. I forgot to take one of New York, but it's just as clean and pretty. So this kind of applies to like most things in my life. I like to like organize things in little boxes. So kind of how this all started was like 3 years ago. The Docker repo, if you didn't know, actually had like an examples directory with a bunch of Docker files in it. Most of them were like for actual services like Nginx or an Apache web server, things that people would actually run in production. But then there was this like side directory with like desktop integration for Docker, and it's just like a very odd niche thing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And there was like a Iceweasel Docker file, and then I ended up like adding gparted, and then after that, everything went downhill, and my entire life has centered around this. So it's pretty weird. I've always ran Linux on the desktop, but once I realized that you could put desktop applications into containers and kind of make your life insanely easier, that's like really what I've been doing for like on the side for fun for a very long time, in this like overall goal of making this like ultimate Linux experience that I would give to literally no one else but myself. So like a little bit today, I'm just gonna go over like all the like decisions behind each layer of this process. So I've demoed like a lot of things in containers, and I actually really hate repeating containers. It's almost like when you repeat an outfit, which I do all the time too. So I mean, I put things like Steam in a container. Steam was probably actually the hardest thing to put in a container. Mostly because the day that I was going to show it, I got that Steam bug where it removes RF root, but it was running in a container, which is a great use case for putting Steam in a container. But then all of my volumes that had all the like games that I had downloaded for the demo were like nuked for my computer. So then I was like, crap, now I have crappy, conference Wi-Fi, and I need to download all these games again, but it all worked out, and it was great. And then OpenGL is also, it goes hand in hand with Steam, obviously, but getting that to work in a container was one thing. I actually made patches to Docker so that you could like recursively mount devices, so that if you mounted like dev sound, you would get all the recursive folders in there, which was not a feature to begin with. So yeah, I actually made features in Docker just for desktop things for myself, which is very weird. Of course, people could use it for other things, but to me, it was for the desktop. So yeah, I've like definitely put a lot of weird things in containers, and I do believe honestly that you can put anything in a container. And you can prove me wrong, but I doubt that you will. So yeah, this is all fine and dandy, like you can put things in containers and run them on your desktop, but like can you actually build a secure operating system from it? Which has kind of been the goal of all this all along. Like containers are just one piece, but if we like tie it together with a bunch of other things, we can have almost like a cubes, but with containers. Obviously not as good as cubes though, which is actual VMs and great. So this is kind of the goal at the end of the day, but I'm gonna go over all the like things that kind of add up to this. And of course at the base is CoreOS Container Linux. So I also have a thing for sandboxes, and in my ideal desktop scenario, everything would be running in its own sandbox, because why else run it in a container if you're not going to get some sort of security from it? So what is a sandbox? Hopefully, if you're at this conference, you're a little bit familiar, but just in case, this is kind of one of the funniest things I've seen about sandboxes. It's like whoever came up with the term sandbox, like obviously doesn't know how sand works. Because when you go to the beach, like you always get sand everywhere. And when you like leave a sandbox, that shit follows you, which is not the point of a sandbox. It's supposed to stay in the thing. So yeah, it's a little bit weird naming, but of course naming is one of the hardest things of computer science. So the goal of a sandbox is to provide like a net reduction in your attack surface. And so if you compare your code run from inside the sandbox to outside, there should be less things possible inside the sandbox than outside, obviously. So one of the most famous sandboxes is Chrome. And they have like a ton of people working on it and really great things. But one of the cool things about Chrome is that it actually uses a lot of the same like fundamentals as containers. So each tab in Chrome, if you didn't know, like Chrome on Linux, will create its own PID namespace. And just in case you don't know what a PID namespace is, it isolates the process ID space. But that's pretty neat. It's mostly so that no tab can really know about any other tabs running processes, so that your Gmail tab is not aware of the thing that you're watching some really sketch video on, or something like that. So they also use like unprivileged user namespaces, network namespaces. They use all the same things as the containers, which is really cool. So we should be able to almost create the same thing as a Chrome sandbox. They use seccomp as well, which containers can also use. And you can like check out in Chrome like what you're using. And the SUID sandbox is like some legacy thing that is terrible. So you obviously want to be doing all the things that this is doing. So the way that like I imagined for my perfect desktop experience of sandboxing things was with seccomp, because it's probably the easiest way to do it. And when I say easy, I mean this is the least bad of all the other alternatives. So seccomp is secure computing with filters. And it allows you to write like BPF programs that will allow or disallow a syscall from running. So BPF filters in the kernel, they're used for tracing and networking and all this other stuff, and they're also used for seccomp. So I started to get into the thing of like applying all this to containers for everyone, and then also globally for my desktop. So Docker got seccomp support as well as like all the other container runtimes and stuff like that, which is nice, and it allowed you to give like a custom profile for your containers, or you could use like this default profile that we wrote, which was like a whitelist that allowed like only a certain set of syscalls. And we tried to deny almost everything that was bad, which is hard. There are a lot of syscalls, and a lot of them are old, and a lot of them are only for like 32-bit architectures. And making something a default in a tool that a lot of people use is very scary. I would have these like anxiety-ridden dreams where I would wake up and be like, everyone is gonna break, and then I'll be blamed, and it's like very scary. Sometimes still I'm like, oh shit, it's intense. Just because like the day before we even released that release, I was running Skype in a container, super normal. And I realized that we were missing two 32-bit syscalls that were send and receive, which seems semi-important for 32-bit applications, which of course, like Skype is a little bit weird because it's 32-bit running on 64, but that is pretty common. So at least we caught that. But yeah, it blocks a bunch of bad stuff, and just to go over a couple that are kind of relevant to this, it prevents you from changing things in the kernel keyring, which is not actually namespaced. It's like this weird limbo half namespace thing that is really awkward. And then it prevents cloning like new namespaces, mostly just to block cloning new user namespaces, which you can clone as an unprivileged user, so you wouldn't need any sort of cap to do that by default. So we're just like, let's block it entirely. So kind of the irony here is that the Chrome sandbox, like I said before, uses unprivileged user namespaces. So I broke myself by doing this, which was a sacrifice that I was willing to make, I guess. I actually had to come to terms with it. It was a really weird thing. But then I realized nobody else was doing that but me, so it was fine. So yeah, whenever my Chrome would break, I couldn't get anything done until I fixed it because it was running in a container and I refused to install things on my host because I'm that stubborn. So yeah, like running Docker master was a very scary thing. Because if I couldn't mount devices, if I couldn't get Chrome to work, then I can't log into GitHub. I can't like literally do work. So yeah, it was kind of a nice way to make sure that everything is working all the time. So running Chrome requires a custom seccomp profile because of this, which I wrote one, which is just really sad. Nobody writes custom seccomp profiles, and for some reason I did. I'm probably the only person. So there are still remaining problems. Like after all this, like I've created, basically like sandboxes for little containers, and they're all kind of safe, but like the Docker daemon runs as root, and that's kind of a huge issue. I want to be able to, create containers on the fly, but as my user and not as a root user because it's semi-important. So I ended up emailing the Open Containers mailing list. I think that we're close to being able to run runc as an unprivileged user. One of the main problems with this is actually C groups, because you need to have permissions to create C groups. So I was like, what if we just ignore the problem of C groups entirely? Or you can add a cap chown thing and try to own them as your user, but then you're still gonna have problems creating the device C groups because you need special permissions there. It's very weird and ugh. But yeah, it's a thing that you can do if you just pretty much ignore C groups. So Alexa Saray from OpenSUSE, he actually wrote a patch. And it took a year to merge, but it finally got in, so mad props. But yeah, this allows you to run C containers as an unprivileged user, so it's kind of exactly what I wanted for my desktop so that I could create these applications on the fly as an unprivileged user. So seriously, over a year, and every time that he rebased, I would get an email, and I was just like, oh God, this is so insane. It's very sad. But yeah, so working with runc is interesting because, of course, it only gives you a small amount of things. It will create the container for you, but it won't do networking and stuff like that. So there were tools to build on top of it, especially when I had already run all my desktop containers in Docker containers, and then I was like, I need to convert them to this other config format if I want to move on with my life. Honestly, I have no idea why I spent so much time on all this. Looking back, it's absurd. So yeah, I made a tool to convert Docker containers to runc specs. I would not suggest using this tool today just because it's an old spec. The runc config changed a bunch in between because this was a year ago. So yeah, and I knew that was going to happen, and yet today I'm just oh, the pain. So yeah, I don't know why I did that to myself. But it is pretty cool. You can also just actually copy the file because they do live on disk if you're using a version of Docker that uses containerd, which was not the case back when I built this. So that's pretty nice. So what about networking? I had to build a tool for that too. This just does some standard networking that if you want to kind of bridge containers together or get an IP for them, it will save it to a file via runc hook. They have these pre, post, all sorts of hooks, which is nice. And then you can do any sorts of things with IPs. So that kind of solved up all those problems, so I was able to use runc to run all the containers that I was already running. So yeah, at this point we have sandbox desktop applications, and they're running in containers, and they have security around seccomp and what they can and cannot do. And then we can run the containers as, not as a root user, so that we eliminate needing privileges, which is really great. And we also eliminate the Docker daemon, which was not something that I wanted to have it as just a dependency. So at this point, I was okay, so what can I do as the base layer to really make this really nice? Because I was using Debian Jessie at the time. It's a really great OS. The name just really makes it. So that was fun and all, but there was a lot to it. And I hated running Ubuntu because it came with all these packages pre-installed, but Debian came with stuff that I didn't want either. I was I want the absolute minimum, and then I'll put everything else in containers because I'm an insane person. So like, obviously, CoreOS is perfect for this. Like, that's what they've been doing all along. So I'll go over kind of some of the things I just got for free out of the box just by using it. So they have like a great file system defaults. It's read-only user, and you get stateful read and write. So this pretty much forces everything to be run in a container, but you do get all the things like of your state on disk, because the thing with desktop applications is like there's a lot of state. Like you have your logins for Chrome and all that cache and stuff like that. You don't want to have to log in every time. And I mean, obviously production applications have these problems too, but you need to like keep state around. Auto updates, you could get out of the box too. I am not actually, this is where I drew the line with myself. I was like, you are not going to run an Omaha server because CoreOS uses the same thing as ChromeOS, which is like Omaha for auto updates. And this was something that I was just like, no, I'll just rebuild it myself, which is fine. I just like, there was a limit to the amount of crazy I was willing to go to. One day, maybe. I like am still convincing myself not to do it, really, secretly. So then there's trusted computing with TPMs, which really just make sure that your like root file system is what you want to be running. And DM Verity, which ties into that and makes sure that it's the OS that you had installed and nobody like messed with it in between, which is really cool. And these are all like the same features as ChromeOS, which has a great reputation for obviously being secure. And a lot of the build tools are the same, which is really awesome. So I get all these things out of the box just by using Container Linux as an OS base. I just had to add graphics drivers, which the way that Container Linux is built is it starts as Gentoo, which I know Gentoo, I've run Linux on the desktop, like emerge, sorry, trigger warning. You can do all that. So yeah, and actually like the design of building the OS is pretty cool. So I'm just like gonna go over that a bit. At first I thought it was like a bit like crazy and big, but then as I got into like the actual sections of it, I was like, this makes sense from a design point of view. Like I could see why they did things a certain way after I understood. It's almost like when someone says, can't you just, but they don't know the entire problem. I was doing that, but in my head. So yeah, building Container Linux. This was fun, mostly because I just love like not knowing things and then figuring it out through trial and error and breaking it, which I did numerous times. Like at first I didn't even add the drivers, I just tried to build it, obviously. So there's a lot of repos that go into this, but this of course is the thing that I was saying was actually really cool at the end of the day, because you just kind of change things in each repo as you need, and then you like tie it all together. So the scripts repo, init, and then there's all these like, if you're familiar with Gentoo, of course, a portage overlay type thing. But I'll go over like what they are. So scripts are just like build and maintenance scripts. So at first I started changing things in here, and I was like, wait, there's actually like variables and stuff, I didn't actually have to change those. So this was like me backing out of being dumb. And then there's init, which handles like init system unit files, and I don't think I changed much in here other than just adding some because I was lazy, and I probably should have put them somewhere else, to be honest. None of this was pretty, by the way, and none of it is pretty at all today. Like, I didn't even clean it up. I was just like, this is fine. That's why no one else should do this. Or at least if they do it, they should not use mine. So CoreOS overlay is like the specific like kind of CoreOS packages, or the ones that they changed from the like portage e-builds. And so I changed a few things in here just with regard to like kernel features and adding graphics drivers and stuff like that. And e-builds, if you're familiar with those, also super fun, like Gentoo, yay. But the cool thing is you don't actually have to deal with Gentoo like on a day-to-day basis, it's just in building it. And then the manifest is kind of like the ultimate source of truth. Like it holds like what repo is coming from where, what branch you're using, and then yeah, it just ties all those repos together at build time with this like repo tool that ChromeOS also uses. And so it looks something like this. Like I'm pointing it to my fork and then the branch named, desktop. And then this has like the versioning and stuff in it too, which I didn't show. And then there's like the base layout, which I don't think I changed anything in here. Actually, I might have put some X files, I don't know. So this is just like the actual like rootfs kind of file system layout. And then portage stable, if you're familiar with Gentoo, almost everyone does this just so that they don't have to pull from portage all the time and they keep like sane versions of things. And Mantle is cool because CoreOS doesn't really have something like this, or at least not something that I found, but this actually like builds everything and ties it together for you. So like you can create all your images with this one tool that actually does it all in a CH root, which like me as a person who like hates files on my host other than the ones that I want, it's like, this is great. Like after I saw this, I was like, okay, I can do this, because I was very nervous about having to like then make a container for the build thing, and then I was like, nope, it's fine, it's already containerized, it's great. I mean, not necessarily containerized, but like at least the files are in a place where I know where they are and they're not writing anywhere else, which is like a huge thing for me, and kind of why I put everything in containers to begin with. So yeah, this is super cool. I almost feel like CoreOS should use this, because it's just really nice to be able to build something in one step. So yeah. After all that, I was like, I have my base, right? And then I have all the cool containers like that are nice in Sandbox, but like, how do I get the images? Where did the images come from? What's their like source of truth, right? And I have like a shit ton of images because I run everything in containers. So I have this like repo with like a ton of images. People will actually try to, open pull requests with their own like very nuanced, like Turing complete, their own thing that they want to do. And I'm like, okay, like you can push this to Docker Hub on your own. It doesn't have to be in mine. And so it's kind of something that I had to like get on people about, because I like feel badly, but like I actually maintain all these, and there's like over 100 of them, and I run them and I make sure that they work, and adding another that I don't actually use is just like a nuisance to me. So yeah, if you ever like want something weird containerized, I might have already done it, and you should probably check my repo. And if it's in there, I know for a fact that it works. And if it doesn't, then I'd probably fix it or delete it, because I want this repo to be like something that is real. So I host my own Jenkins, which rebuilds these files like all the time, and it actually builds Docker files in other repos that I have on GitHub, and some Docker files in repos that are not mine, but that I want to use. Like there's a OpenVPN one that like I build and stuff like that. So these build based off of Git pushes, but then they also do cron jobs, because I want to make sure that like the base OSs that they're building from are up to date. But this, of course, comes with another set of challenges of like actually making sure that there are like no vulnerabilities in any of these. So that's when I like deployed my own player as well, because I host my own Docker registry, ultimate nerdum. Mostly I did that because back in the day, Docker Hub was such a shit show. Do not repeat me about that. I'm just kidding. I mean, if you were there, you know. So yeah, I've been hosting my own Docker registry for a very long time. I also push them to Docker Hub now, just so that there's like a backup just in case. But mine's hosted on Google Cloud, so when S3 went down, I was like, haha, that's why I have my own. So yeah, sadly. Yeah, I built this command line tool, which does a bunch of things with regard to a Docker registry, not just vulnerability scanning, but it does do that. And then also it will do like LS, like list all your images in a registry, and you can delete images and stuff like that. Kind of things that you don't get out of the box with just like a registry itself, which kind of sucks. Like there should be some sort of standard command line client or something for a Docker registry. It's sad. So along with this is like another binary in that same repo, and like it creates like a UI for your registry. So I don't push any private images to my Docker registry. I actually have a different registry for that, just because I wanted one to be public and one to be private. You could of course like do some sort of auth controls on it, but why not just deploy another? So yeah, this one is just open to the public. So like I actually let other people pull my images from my registry. I don't think many people do. There's like another maintainer of my Docker files repo, which like, oh, thank God for him, because like whenever I don't have time to review like pull requests or update versions of images, he does it. And he also like closes the other ones that I don't want. And I'm just like, yeah, I agree with that. It's really nice. So yeah, this is cool. I like wanted a static UI for the registry, and I couldn't find one. But there are a bunch of other UIs that I think probably fill more use cases than mine. I just wanted something super simple. So it looks like this, it's very simple. But there are like those really elaborate like corporate ones that you probably want for your enterprise and not this one. But what this also will give you is like these outputs of vulnerabilities. So I use the command line tool of Reg to kind of output which of these is good or bad. And it will take like a maximum, and then Jenkins will email me if it's like over 10 for each image. And it like very rarely happens because I do use a cron job to like rebuild them all the time. But most of the ones where it happens, it's like something terrible like Android tools, or like, I don't know, something based on some really legacy like Ubuntu or Debian version, which is really sad. So that's really cool. So like we started with this idea of this and got here. This all took like 3 years, which is insane. And then adding on top of this is like the git push and cron jobs, which go to Jenkins. And then you can like build, push, and sign the images. I signed all the images with a notary and stuff when that came out. And then I actually, on my host, only allow images that are signed, which is a little bit crazy because there was a point in time where, you know, the actual Docker Hub official images would be pushed and updated, but they wouldn't be signed necessarily. There was like some sort of out of sync thing. And so there's at least like 4 issues that I opened like on the official images about this, and I'm like, hey, this image is updated, but like it hasn't been signed. I think I was like the only person running this or something because it was always me. It was very weird. But then I think they fixed that problem because I haven't seen it in a while, or I'm not the one reporting it anymore, and they fixed it before that. And then it also scans for image vulnerabilities and stuff like that. So like everything running on my host kind of has like a line of trust, which is really cool. And a lot of it just kind of is thankfully from CoreOS, like Claire and Container Linux, which is really cool. Yeah, so now we kind of got the secure base with the DM Verity, and then trusted boot, and a simple file system with like no other dependencies other than, you know, graphics and my window manager and stuff. And then you have your read-only user and auto updates if I wanted to do that, but I'm actually not that insane. I mean, I might be that insane. It really depends on the day. And then sandbox applications as containers, which are not running as root as well. And then my container images get scanned. So everything just piles on. It's super great. And this entire talk has actually been running on Container Linux in a rootless container with a seccomp filter in Chrome. So that was actually all that I had. I've done like the whole spin up a bunch of different applications before, and it's just like, it feels lame at this point because it's just like using a computer. And that's like how simple it is. So yeah, I mean, I'll take questions or do anything if you want to see things. Yes?
Did you buy like 2 of those same laptops? Because what happens if it breaks?
I actually
Upgrade.
do own 2 of these, but mostly just because I love this computer. But I have on the side also a Chromebook for my actual job, and then I have like a workstation for my actual job. But yes, if you're running Linux on the desktop, just like literally any Linux on the desktop, it is always nice to have a backup computer. Like, I mean, at least if you're like modifying shit, like you're gonna want something to Google on when shit goes wrong. Which especially if I can't launch Chrome, so then we have a problem. Yes? Yeah, I thought about doing that too, but I didn't know actually the build tool chaining for that, and I had been looking into ChromeOS and stuff like that, and once I realized that like Container Linux was like basically based off that, I was like, this seems a lot more sane. And actually, now that I work at Google, and if I ever wanted to change something in ChromeOS, I would feel more able to do it. Not that I would change something, but like I feel like I actually know the tool chain for it versus being completely ignorant. Yeah.
Actually, we do have a microphone. I'm sure your question is important to everybody.
You mentioned that you run your public repository or your container registry on Google? Why not use the Google Container Registry? What's the value of having your own?
So they didn't actually have that back in the day. I've been thinking about converting at least like the side repo ones that I have, because I don't know, I should probably look into this though, so my kind of mono repo of a bunch of Docker files, I don't know if it would be able to handle that. I'd almost need, I think, separate repos, but I'm not sure, or maybe separate directories. I should probably look into it, but I am thinking of switching my, all these Go applications that I build containers for to it, because they have that kind of pipeline builder where you can do the super small images, and that's something I definitely want instead of make files, although I love make files.
So how, over here.
Sorry.
So how Inception is this? Is the pipeline actually running on your laptop as well, or is that all fanned out into VMs in the cloud? Or?
Oh yeah, that's all in the cloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be really bad whenever I close my computer. Actually, it was running on my NOS in my apartment for a while, and then once I moved and I unplugged that, I was like, that was a terrible idea. Same with my Plex, which has been down for months. My uptime is really bad for that. But the uptime of my registry is actually really good because I can't run anything on my computer unless it's up. Whenever it goes down and I actually have to do something, that's when I pull from Docker Hub, because there is this weird chicken and egg problem where some of the things that run my registry are on my registry. So yeah. That was interesting to solve one time. But yeah, it's pretty easy to run a registry. Yeah.
So this is really cool, but do you think this is ever going to become the norm, where we're going to have a CoreOS-esque desktop version where everybody runs container, all their applications in containers?
I think it would be really cool. I don't want to be the one to support it, though. That's the problem. But yeah, the overall goal is that you can make a desktop operating system just like Chrome OS, but able to have a terminal that is not SSH'd into something else, and that is not Crouton, which I don't use on my Chromebook, but a lot of people use that. But you have to actually give certain permissions to get that. I want that out of the box. I don't want to have to be I want super user privileges to do this. You should be able to do that from the get-go. So yeah, I think it would be really, really awesome. And Subgraph has kind of made something like this, and they actually support it and stuff like that. And they have some really cool sandboxing features. So I would say that's almost the way to go. I was talking to them about how I switched to Container Linux as the base, because right now they're using Debian Stretch, I think. I think I want them to kind of convert, because you do get so many things out of the box that you wouldn't get with Debian at all. Yeah.
Which was that manufacturer again? Or that company again?
Subgraph, yeah. It's basically cubes, but with containers. Yeah, they have cool stuff. They also have a lot of good Go libraries for seccomp and writing profiles. And then they have this really cool kind of little snitch daemon thing. So I was gonna try to port that to mine, but then I got lazy. But yeah, they have some really cool features that I didn't even think about. Who here runs Linux on the desktop? Oh, whoa, nice. That's cool. Yeah, you guys all like pain. I mean, I feel like it takes a certain person to run Linux on the desktop, genuinely all the time. I mean, at least if you're messing with stuff, it becomes painful super fast.
Do you have your slides up?
Oh yeah, I'll put them public. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I mean, it should be on this one. We can just run it in OpenGLF or something. Oh, this is going to be some sort of document, sorry. Chrome experience. I feel like my browser's going to crash now, and this is going to be a horrible demo. Yeah, you also get like sound out of the box too, if I unmute. So I mean, like that's why these demos like get a little bit sad at the end of the day, just because it's like I'm using my computer like a normal person. But it's just behind the scenes is like what's happening, which is cool. But yeah, I muted it just because that was annoying me. Yeah, it's nice. So like I think that like eventually, you know, people who are not developers could possibly use this. Although I do feel weird about giving them Linux on a desktop. But you know, ChromeOS did it, so.
So like with a fresh install, how do you like, are you using like an ignition file to put all those services on the box, like after you build the?
So I wanted to use Ignition, but then I was like, I didn't have enough time to like learn another config format. So I like bash scripts. That's why nobody else should use this. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's a lot of bash.
Have you tried using Rocket containers?
Yeah, I actually have. I just like ended up like sticking to one, but I haven't put enough time into like switching to Rocket or anything. Yeah. Eventually, I like ran out of time for this entire experiment. So, otherwise, I would have done auto updates because I literally can't stop myself.
Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, don't try this at home though, like really, yeah, it's really scary. Cool.